Good afternoon,
Afternoon.
Doctor. Yeah, welcome to today's session on inflation.
Okay.
This is the Center for the Study of the Economies of Africa. Um, Part of what we do is to engage experts to get their views about issues relating to the economy. And today's we're discussing the inflation. The rise in inflation that Nigeria is experiencing, for years now. And I think that you, as an expert economist, will bring some unique perspectives to it, especially on the aspect of tackling inflation. Welcome. Please, let's start by introducing yourself.
Thank you very much, and I'm really excited to be here. I'm Hassan Mahmood. I've finished working officially as I retired from the central bank last year after working for 35 years. At the bank, I rose to become the director of monetary policy in 2020. And then in 2023, I was director of trade and exchange department. And from there, I retired. Prior to then, I was also the head macroprudential surveillance at the bank at the Financial Policy and Regulation department. I also served as a special advisor to the governor then, 2009 to 14, on economic policy. I spent some time at the African Union Commission as a technical expert when they wanted to establish the African Monetary Fund. That is still ongoing, but the way bureaucracies work here, I've still not put things together to be able to achieve that, just like the common currency we're seeing. But those are my first step so far.
Okay.
In summary.
So I'll start by asking you, because the topic is inflation, which you are very familiar with. I'll start by asking you, what aspects of your daily life or experience do you witness inflation? As in, which aspect of life do you observe inflation, more often? So what sector or what aspect of your life do you observe the aspect of inflation?
Okay, personally, we are more of the urban inflation targeters, in the sense that while food inflation is the highest in the headline inflation basket, a substantial part of the increases we see in inflation are driven by food. As your income level increases or your class in the society increases, even though food is part of your expenditure line, but it's not the volume of food you eat, it's the quality of food you eat. All the services, appliances, electricity bills, and all that, transportation costs. So I get more impacted from the inflation that we see around what they call core inflation, energy prices, and some of the urban services that we enjoy, accommodation. Even if you have your own house, the cost of maintaining the house, firing your electricity, maintenance of all the services you receive, I think I get the highest hit from there. But I also appreciate that the generality of the people get more hit by the food side of the inflation, which translates to, because if the low income people you employ are going to be spending more on food and all that because of the inflation, they also demand more wages to meet that. So for providing services to me, I need to pay more for that, for your security men and all that. So those, I don't know whether they're tertiary or they are middle class kind of demand bucket, are where I get the impact of inflation.
Okay, so following that, in recent times, I think since last year, last 2 years, a lot of the inflation being experienced are kind of attributed to the economic reforms, particularly the removal of fuel subsidies, as well as the unification of the exchange rate.
Yeah.
Do you think there would have been any way these policies would have been implemented without having these much inflationary pressures?
I don't think there'll be any other way. One, while the subsidy removal is more from it's a subsidy for consumption, not subsidy for production.
Okay.
However, there were leakages in that process, which I attribute to weak and lack of transparency within the institutional structure that is managing that. And subsidy itself is not bad. Every economy is doing it, but it has to impact on further improvement in the economy and welfare of the citizenry. But we see that being lost due to those institutional weaknesses and leakages. So removing it was no option. And to take care of that, since you cannot fix those institutions overnight. Yeah. So just take it off and see how you invest that into other areas. So taking it off immediately means that cost of those consumables to the consumers will definitely increase, cost of price and all that. And liberalizing that sector itself, allowing private sector players who are profit maximizing institutions and they need to break even, will mean that the cost will now be going up. Yeah. On the exchange unification side, it was also a necessity that has to be done, because the disparity in the exchange rate was, one, distortionary, two, weakening the market confidence, creating avenue for lack of transparency, and you see arbitrage and all shenanigans going on in that space, which is also tied to institutional weaknesses, and that require that, and also our partners, international partners, other countries that we trade with, also have, even those that give us facilities within loans, have issues around the stability of the exchange rates. That disparity in rates was also affecting both demand and supply. Even though we know demand and supply is a structural issue that also comes from export and all that, but that room that we created was perpetuating, unnecessary or false appreciation of the naira, and that was, fueling into further inflation, particularly every other thing that is, we're import dependent.
That's right.
Everything that's tied to that, even if there are inputs, not the final product inputs. For production, we also high cost of machineries, cost of expertise, technical expert were high. So it translated to, higher prices for goods and services and energy and manufacturing products. So those policy actions were inevitable. The implementation, as at today, there's still a lot of issues around them, but I think the initiative taken to deal with them head on was quite bold. I think if we are able to resist or take care of some of the shocks that are coming from it and provide stabilizer within the economy, we should be able to sustain this for a while and see if we can see positive outcome, because these policies are not something that you start seeing positive results in 1 year or something like that. But if you just sustain it, moderate it where you think there are some severe impacts on your vulnerable people, by providing some cushions for them. Otherwise, going on with it, be more transparent with it, have good communication with those that are being impacted, and give them a forward guidance of the likely positive outcomes you expect from it. I think we'll be able to scale through.
Okay, I'm happy you mentioned cushioning effects.
Yes.
Because there's this argument that there are other ways of implementing reforms, that will not allow the impact to be as huge as it is felt now. That it could be that it could be phased. There could be more communication across maybe the vulnerable groups, and maybe even the efforts to cushion the effects should be mapped out and even implement alongside the reform itself. So having said that, do you think that there is substantial cushioning effect for this policy, or is there any cushioning effect um, strategy that you think will be more appropriate?
Like you rightly said, in retrospect, the subsidy removal or the drastic reforms should have been stepwise, should have been gradual.
Right.
So take this volume, absorb that, consume that, go to the next level, so that you get people to be able to adapt to it.
Yeah.
The one-off has happened, can't do anything about that again. But the cushioning effect is very important. Whether there is enough now, I don't think I can boldly say that. When subsidy removals was done, there should be, like you said, proper strategy of having like transport vouchers for people that will live from Guagalada or from Dumota or from somewhere, to go to work. There are no public transports. There are no trains that are cheap. People go on commercial vehicles, and those commercial vehicles buy the fuel from them. So you don't have that cushioning effect. Two, you don't see the gains from the subsidy removals. Before subsidy, we were hearing quarterly that subsidy has moved to 2 trillion, 4 trillion. Assuming those monies come back, yes, we've removed, government is recovering them, and they're putting them on roads, they're putting them on electricity supply, putting them on healthcare, and some of these public hospitals, some of these public roads that you can use. So you see farmers, workers, people can easily commute very easily. So you see that bringing some impact. Through that too, electricity, people can get their small jobs, meaning SMEs and all that can produce their things and all that. So income level will improve, and if it improves, you see that aggregate demand builds up. That fits into those that are going to be supplying those things. So, because even if you have those that are producing things and don't have buyers, then you see that it will also deflate that and job losses will come. But if the income level is improved because of these amenities that are public amenities provided from the gains of the subsidy, then you start seeing, pick up. But I'm not seeing much of that. I know government is doing a lot. There are lots of interventions and all that. But those institutional weaknesses, when I mean institutional weaknesses, I mean the processes, the bureaucracy, the retapism, the corruption, the leakages, the favoritism, and all that come into that is distorting, the positive outcome that everybody is expecting.
Okay. Yeah. So from what you've been saying is that you tend to touch on the supply side.
Yes.
Issues. Let's come to your core, which is the demand side.
Yes.
So the central bank has been, it's the tool available to use increases in monetary policy rate to control inflation. I think they've done that 8 times, but the inflation just keeps going higher. What do you have to say about that? Do you think they should continue to increase the rates, or should they hold up, or is it that we don't have any other tool to use to check inflation apart from monetary policy? So what is your take on inflation?
My take will be that one, the central bank is controlling the monetary phenomenon in the inflation rate. So central bank is trying to manage money supply, base money within the economy, because the thinking is, yes, inflation has both structural and monetary. The monetary is the demand side and then some of the injections that come from central bank. Even if central bank has stopped interventions, what do you call that in payment to government, financing government, deficit financing through ways and means. Through ways and means. Even though central bank has stopped that, we see central bank is also in the drive to manage FX, both supply and demand. Even though its core is demand, but there's a level to which you can tighten demand to affect prices. You need to also boost the supply side. So central bank is also taking very positive initiatives towards improving supply. That is coming from FDIs and FPIs, foreign portfolio investors, foreign direct investors. So those funds are coming to the system are sometimes monetized particularly those that come through the capital market and all that, even the short-term money market windows are monetized into naira. Those naira hits the system. When the supply side is not improving substantially, you see those ones becoming excess supply of liquidity within the system. So the central bank tightening is to enable you pull out those funds from the banking system, from the monetary base, such that you'll be able to moderate that supply to meet that liquidity, to meet the level of production and productivity within the economy. So whether that monetary tightening will fully solve the inflation trajectory, the rising inflation trajectory, I absolutely say it cannot. So you have to have a complementary, from the fiscal side around improving production, agriculture, manufacturing, services, and all that, and other things that we've mentioned around the plowback of the subsidy gains into the economy, so that you also be dealing with the structural side. Because the currently, I don't think the inflation is demand pull. It's more supply push. Yes. So you see, because supply sides are very weak, and then you see that, and even productivity is also weak because the technology and all that comes, innovation that comes, is also weak. Services sector is doing very well, but that does not bring much employment to a larger number of unskilled labor force that will impact on aggregate demand and improve the supply side. So that monetary tightening by the central bank will cure this current inflation, maybe 20-30%. A substantial part of it will have to come from the production side.
So you mentioned some interesting aspects, like you mentioned the coordination with the fiscal side, because if you're increasing interest rates and the spending on the fiscal side is not efficient, it's not it's wasteful in a sense, it could also have increased inflation pressure. And even there's also the argument that even the cash transfers could be inflationary. So what do you have to say about that need for that coordination between the monetary and fiscal side in tackling inflation?
The coordination is extremely very important, and the coordination is in terms of policy direction. Coordination is not necessarily the individuals or the institutions, because institutions are supposed to be independent, doing the right thing, but towards a common goal. The instruments and tools that the central bank uses is different from the fiscal. So everybody should be allowed to use its own tools efficiently and independently based on their internal arrangement. So I'm not, there shouldn't be a compromise in that. And that gives more transparency to the entire process. But what is important is that both parties have a common goal. Common goal does not mean that all of them must target the same thing. Common goal means that the tools that are going to be used to address those final outcome are targeted such that if government is spending, for example, coming out of a recession, or there's need for intervention and support, all this cash transfer and all that, you bring a lot of liquidity within the system. The central bank is supposed to come in to ensure that that liquidity does not become inflationary. So it gets to it, so they have to agree at what threshold they will come in. Common agreement. Central bank is part of the government, just like the fiscal. So it's not really antagonistic in their approach, but it should be such that what the central bank is doing is complementing what the fiscal is doing towards the common goal for the economy. If we are looking at growth, for example, as our primary objective as a nation, yes, growth will come, but there's a level of inflation that will be deterring growth. So monetary authorities should be able to know that threshold and hold the inflation number so that the growth numbers can be achieved. But where you have, everybody going its own way, federal government is spending, pushing small liquidity into the system. Central bank is injecting a lot of liquidity within the system through maybe the sellout of homos and all that, to selling instruments to financial institutions to bring in money into the system. So you see, that will not be complementary.
Right.
Yeah, so the coordination and collaboration should be such that it is towards achieving a common goal. And I see some of that going on now, but in periods of crisis, which we're in semi-crisis now, such kind of coordination could be a bit difficult, but there's need for proper communication and established institutional processes to enable that happen. But it's critical.
It's critical.
Yeah.
So we'll go to like final points.
Yes.
You know, in line with these issues that you mentioned, what will be the ideal strategy towards tackling these rising inflation, especially due to when these conventional approaches have not seemed to be quite effective. Are they unconventional approaches, or what would be the ideal strategy to tackle Nigeria's inflation?
I think it should be the adoption of both conventional and unconventional approach.
Okay.
One I should emphasize is that the structural issues, there should be deliberate efforts to address them very quickly. Energy, supply, electricity and power generation, other infrastructure, roads, security is very critical. If those issues are addressed, the forces of demand and supply will enable the efficient distributions of goods and services, and we start seeing improvement in the economy. The central bank on its own side must also be very effective on the demand management side. We know demand management is a temporary procedure, but more effective, and also focus on identifying the thresholds of where to hold or where to lose, such that this negative impact we're seeing does not further deteriorate the welfare gains for the populace. That will also include improving this infrastructure to drive agricultural manufacturing for exports, so they have inflows of FX for the central bank to be able to do its job. Moderate the borrowing, excess borrowing, because these are things that we need to pay back, and if we don't have sources of paying back, then you start seeing severe taxes and all that, which will have negative impact on the economy and also reduce our prospects to growth. So my final words around this is: one, critical look at this infrastructure development, factors that will drive growth, even if it's in the services sector, or innovations, or startup, or SMEs, MSEs. Yes, so to create jobs, to make the growth process more inclusive, as a lot more people are participating in the growth process, and then the central bank will comfortably be able to do its own side of the equation. Yes.
Okay, on that note, I would like to thank you very much, Mahmood Hassan, for your very insightful contribution to the debate.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
All right, yeah, always a pleasure.
Yeah.